You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's Thursday and we're back again. You're listening to me, Mighty Blue or Steve Adams, and this is episode number 395 of the show. We're closing in on number 400 and I've been given a few ideas on what to do with that show, but I'll come back to that later. Today, our guest is a previous guest on the podcast. We first met Chris Casado a couple of years back. He has set up TSX Challenge, and I am on the show to tell us all about that. As you probably all know, I'd failed in 3 attempts to complete the John Muir Trail. And as we were chatting, I guess I was probably moaning about those failures, well, Chris told me that he could get me to the top of Whitney. Well, long story short, as you know, he did. And last year, I had on all of Team 6, which was our team name, to talk about that hike and how it had affected us all. And I'll tell you, it was both deep and meaningful and long-lasting. I'd never been on such a difficult team effort in which all of us succeeded, and we each took joy in each other's successes. It was quite a lesson. But I hadn't included Chris in that conversation, mainly because I wanted to hear the story of us as hikers without his perspective. Well, I'm now getting that perspective, and I think you'll find he's a fascinating guy with some deep, strong thoughts on hiking out west. Chris will be on in a moment. Also today, we'll hear again from Jessica and Joanne, including a few tears from the top of Katahdin. They'll both be on after Chris. Finally, we have quite a long conclusion to chapter 22 of Then the How Came by George Stephanos. I shall let you all know that I'm considering reading a book next about the AT, written by a woman. No, I won't be changing my voice, because I'm really just reading you all a book. More news about that soon. So let's get on here for the second time from my friend, Chris Casado. Our guest today is one of the few people to come on for a second time. It's not because I don't invite people, no, but I have actually invited this guy. This is Chris Casado, or Commissioner. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming on for a second time.
Yeah, good morning, Steve. Thank you for having me.
And this is morning for you. We're 11 o'clock over here. It's 8 a.m. in the morning for you. So you've just got up and you're not out on a hike. And just so listeners know, I was originally going to get Chris on to plug all of his new group hikes. But after hearing from him and reading a few of his notes, I thought we'd go for a full interview. And I guess we'll start with our hike last year. It was the first time I'd ever done a group hike. And as I told everyone on the show after the hike, I loved it. Are you able, Chris, to encapsulate what it is that happens when a group of people get together on a hike and pull in the same direction?
Yeah, I mean, the trip you had was pretty incredible. There was a week-long hike across the Sierra to Mt Whitney, and I think the unique thing about these trips is you have people that come from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, and maybe just about backpacking and being on the trail as well. And when you kind of have a certain common goal together, all the other stuff from the front world, front country kind of steps aside and goes away, and you all focus and help each other supporting that one amazing goal. And it was a pretty spectacular experience that we had. Getting to know people, I think, is the secret ingredient in terms of Mount Whitney was the big hook that got everyone there, but it was the adventure and the trail along the way that kind of really made the experience what it is.
But you never know until day one when we all meet at the hotel what the composition of that group is going to be. You've got names, you don't know who, probably don't know you've probably not met any of them before, have you, in most cases?
Most people know, we've just been looking at them. That's correct. Right,
and so that must be an interesting thing because, and I'm sure that our group, special though we undoubtedly were, we weren't the only group to get that experience. As the leader of these trips, do you see it happening in front of you, or do you do things to make it happen?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think there's that common struggle, which brings people together. When you have a challenge every day and multiple days in a row, people tend to gravitate and respond and come together. But I also think there's some small things that we do that just kind of we treat this as a team, and setting these expectations in advance when people come in that, hey, this is a team effort. We're going to be working together. Well, it is kind of an organized group. it's not like a traditionally organized group. I think it has a little bit of a different feel and a different experience to it.
And funnily enough, and I was just thinking this as you were saying that, on that very first day, the first thing you give people is a heavy weight of food to carry them through. Because I think we had to carry 7 days of food, was it? But that's really crammed into these buckets, because you tell people don't bring your own bear box or bear canister. We provide those for you. I don't know whether you remember, I volunteered for the heaviest one first day. Just want you to know that. So the old guy went for the heaviest one. Yeah. But so tell people about that, because that is a surprising bonding experience in itself, isn't it? When you've got all the food there together.
Yeah, it's kind of the big wake up call, especially if you've never hiked with a bear can before. And we had to have a full people that were kind of first time backpackers as well. When you have to load in a fully loaded bear can with 7 or 8 days of food, and then a snack bag on top of that with 2 or 3 snacks a day, and then the fuel can, and all of a sudden that lightweight pack really goes up. And we eat pretty well on the trail.
We eat amazingly, Chris. Now, listen, you are absolutely selling yourself short. Tell people about 1 or 2 of your meals. And we were just watching you cook these things and, oh my God, how does he do this? Even on day 4 or day 5, we were still getting decent food.
Thanks. Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? So we help people try and go lightweight with their packs. So you want to have your lightweight gear and, take as little as possible. And we do a pack check, make sure everyone's kind of dialed in. But at the same time, we go a little bit heavier on the food. So we'll have nicer vegetables out there, and we'll hold vegetables, broccoli and, tomatoes and cucumbers on occasion, and things that probably aren't the best calorie to weight ratio, but they taste really great when you pull them out of your bear can on day 4 and day 5 and mix them with like a nice hearty meal. So. Yeah,
the food was a great memory of mine that I've never eaten so well on trail, let me tell you. And in the notes that you sent me, it wasn't a throwaway remark, but I'd like you to expand upon it a bit. You refer to it as inspiration for a lifetime, and we had plenty of memories to take away from the trip. Not just getting to the top of Whitney, which was really special, of course, but also those personal relationships that formed. Tell us about a few of the people who came in our group have carried it forward, because I know quite a few of them have come back with you guys and done other things, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it's you get to know a whole set of people you may not have met otherwise for their other channels. And so it's been great. There was a handful of people, I think 3 or 4 people in particular, that joined us back in the Grand Canyon. Gershom, Dina, Beth, and David. So 4 people from our trip all came back to the Grand Canyon, and they were out on the Escalante route for about 3 nights, 4 days. And that was a pretty rugged experience. And I think they're also hiking together either this week or the next week or 2 as we speak up in Oregon. So they've kind of stayed together, and they're creating their own hikes and doing their own outings now. I know there was a couple that were...
You don't get that one? You don't get that one then?
I got invited, actually. Unfortunately, I'm headed out on the trail this next week. So, our season's a little bit back and loaded this year, just given all the snow that we had in the Sierra.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit busy here, but otherwise I'd love to go. I know there's another couple that stayed in touch, Karen and Beth, and they were planning a John Muir Trail hike together. I think partly inspired by your efforts as well to get back out there.
My pathetic efforts. I tell you were the man who told me I could get there, and we'll come back to that as well. But for me, it was those quiet moments just as much as the epic Whitney day, because, that was a fantastic day, exhausting but fantastic. It was those quiet moments interacting with others. And most notably for me was when we came to, I don't really remember this, we came to that water slide, which, who'd think there's a water slide out in the wilderness. We came to this water slide. It's kind of it's a slide on smooth granite, and it's beautiful, and you can really move down it as well. And the other Steve on the trip had come prepared and stripped down to his shorts and slid down. And everybody else seemed to be a little bit reluctant to go. I don't really remember. We were all just sitting there, really. Yeah. And I happened to be sitting watching with Dara, and I said I didn't think I'd be doing it, and she said, great thing she said. She said, "What, you can do it next time?"
Yep.
It was so beautifully withering and encouraging in the same sentence. And eventually, of course, we all did it. And then the biggest takeaway, and I will never forget this as long as I live, and it was the biggest surprise to me, was Beth and Karen welcoming all of us into a rest stop or the end of the day, whooping and hollering and applauding. And I tell you, it was enough to make me sort of shed a tear pretty much every time it happened. But you must see a lot of that. What stands out as a special memory for you, not just from our trip, but others as well? Because I'm sure others find these magic moments they didn't expect to happen.
There's a lot of great moments. I think for me, I don't want to characterize this like having an experience like getting all the way to Mount Whitney is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, what I take the most joy in is it's hard to do on your own. It's hard to do a big trip like this on your own, and getting all the way across the Sierra. You might have people you would size up if you were just, passing them on the street that, there's no way they're going to make it. No way they're going to get there. But there's something incredible about like individuals and the determination they have and the willpower they have to, make something like this happen. We've had people that have had two sprained ankles, and they just tape them up, pop in the ibuprofen, and they just keep on hiking. People that, are kind of struggling from a low altitude, or, they just keep on rolling as well. We've had people who come out and, their father was a big hiker, or their sister, and they're no longer with them. And so this is a big memory trip for them. And they're having a moment where they're going to be out there and doing something in their memory. And that's kind of something that drives them forward. And so I think everyone at some point on the trail, when you're doing something with a big goal at the end, and that's difficult as this is, you have to find something to kind of will you forward, something that you have to dig deep on and kind of lean on. And it's great to see people when they have that moment to kind of push through it. And then they come out on the other side so much stronger. And that translates, I think, hopefully, from my perspective, inspiration for a lifetime is not just on the trail, but when you translate that back into other great things you're going to do when you get back home, whether it be your personal life, your family life, your work life, you realize you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. And that's the goal from my perspective of what we try to accomplish.
And I think hiking, doing those long hikes and getting somewhere, and I love the idea of starting somewhere and finishing somewhere else. That's my idea of hiking. I don't like going back to the same place at all. The idea of a loop appalls me. So just to get somewhere else was just an awesome thing. And it's worth pointing out that we had, how many do we have in our group? About
we had 14.
6. We had 14, and we all made it, didn't we? No one didn't make it. I mean, I'm sure you must have looked in those first couple of days and thought several of us, me included, might be having a few problems getting there in the end. But we all got there in the end, so that was great. And while we mentioned, you mentioned Sierra just now, with that snow this year, what's it like up there now? And have you been up there recently?
I did get up there. I went up a little bit early. I went up July 6th, and July 6th was still pretty aggressive. I tried to take we had a youth trip out there. We had 5 kids who were 12 years old and 5 dads who were much older than 12 out there hiking together. And we made it. We did our route that we did together, the Trans-Sierra route. We only got to about Big Wet Meadow. There were massive avalanches out there. Giant snowpacks. The rivers were still rushing a little bit too strong. And so we made the decision to turn back. However, we just had one group come off the trail this past week. It was a small group, and that was our official team one, and they made it all the way across. I don't know if you recall, just some small. Colby Pass was all of snow, so there was snow going over the pass, and they slid down the backside. Nice. And then when they got down to the Kern River, which is kind of the big crossing that we have on this route, it took them about an hour just to find a route across. So they just took their time and pieced it together, but they all made it, and it was a huge accomplishment.
That's quite a responsibility though, Chris, isn't it? By definition, your team leader has a responsibility, and I'm sure you've got all the right sort of skills and the people you entrust with those skills to lead. Is this a constant worry for you, or is this something you're confident in the person who leads the team that they're going to manage this properly? Because you are responsible in some ways for other people screwing up, aren't you? Which sounds terrible, I know. But how do you feel about that?
So for the Trans-Sierra trip, for all the trips that we do, I think we make sure we have really strong people out there that are, it's one thing just to know the trail, but it's something else to be able to hold space and just have confidence and be able to lead people and be able to help people through some difficult mental times. And I think that's the kind of soft skill it takes to be a leader out there is just not just knowing the trail, that's kind of table stakes, but also just having the confidence to manage difficult situations, and also knowing when to turn around. So we talked quite a bit in our training about, hey, if you see this, we're niching around. If you see that, we're niching around. Or here are some solutions of how we can manage these situations together.
Right.
And that kind of goes into the process. But I think you do have a lot of trust. For me, it's always, once from the outside, we get messages every night, making sure people are checking in as they're going along.
Right.
And once people come out on the other side, it's always like you're holding your breath for a second. Like, you know how difficult it was, right? You were on the trip, Steve, and you know like how difficult it was. And so you're always wondering, how are people processing it? Did they buy into it? Did they get it? Is it there? Or is it they come out being like, what the hell? What did we just do? Right? What did we walk through? So there's always like a little moment holding your breath, but more times than not, like it's an incredible experience and everything comes back just as we're hoping. So,
well, when you finish that endless last day back to civilization, it does seem endless, by the way. And then you have and I think your mum turned up, and your old colleague who got you into this in the first place turned up and gave us all beers or drinks and things like that. It was that everybody who came in was so. We were so ebullient when we were so happy, not happy that it was over, but happy we'd done it. And as a team, we'd done it. And I thought that was just a great feeling when we actually got there. So I suspect you can relax most times, because when people get in there, they've done it and they can breathe a sigh of relief in many ways, can't they?
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a day or two to realize that was pretty incredible, right? The first day you're kind of like still coming off and there's a bit of a high, but like you're still just kind of processing things. And after a day or two, even people who maybe that wasn't their thing when they were on the trail, or they were fighting it when they were on the trail, after a couple of days, oftentimes they'll be like, you know what, maybe I can do that again. Like, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
kind of cool is one way of putting it. Yeah. So let's step back a bit. Even since we spoke the first time, when you told me that you could get me to the top of Whitney, which of course you did, by the way, you've added several new options to your schedule. How do you go about finding something new and exciting for groups to do? Because the John Muir Trail is a John Muir Trail, and that's not part of your itinerary, although we did touch the John Muir Trail, obviously, when we did it. What are you looking for, and how do you find it? Because you've given me a list of, is it Helfershore, Mount Goddard, and Tehipite Valley, or I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us about each of those and how you found those.
So I when we first started TSX, my original plan was just to do one route and just do it really well. And that was the route that you did, the week-long hike across the Sierra to Mt Whitney. And we called it the Trans Sierra Extreme Challenge. And that's how we got TSX.
Yeah, you didn't emphasize the extreme, by the way. You never. I didn't pay attention to that.
So I've been backpacking the Sierra since I was 14 for since the early 90s. I've been backpacking this route for a long time, and I love it. I love sharing it with people. But I have a friend I went to school with, or undergrad with, and he lives out in Flagstaff, Arizona. And back in 2014, 2015, he's like, Casado, you do all this backpacking in the Sierra, you got to come check out the Grand Canyon. Like, it'll blow you away. And so he introduced me to the Grand Canyon, and he put together this like 3-night, 4-day loop out there. And I was completely blown away. I think very few places can rival the Sierra, but the Grand Canyon is definitely one of them. It's like rugged, it's remote, it's tranquil. It has like everything you'd like in an incredible backpacking experience. And so the two of us,
you need to stop there. That does not appeal to me at all, because it feels like it's just endless down and then endless up again. So sell me on it. So you experienced it, and I haven't experienced. I'm not going to talk myself into doing this, by the way.
Go ahead.
But just tell me, if you were going to sell someone on it, what was so great about it? Because it looks just horrendous to me.
Oh my gosh, the Grand Canyon's incredible because it's like, so first of all, it's like 277 river miles long. It's a large canyon. Have you been out there, by the way?
I've done whitewater rafting. I've done 179 miles on the canyon, 6 days and 5 nights in the canyon. It was awesome. Walking down to it and walking up it, because their sides look like it's about a mile high, incredibly steep.
Well, the first day going down is usually the most difficult by far.
Oh, right.
And so it's usually the downhill, which hurts people the most. It's hard to prepare for like 8 or 9 miles of intense downhill. But once you get down there, it's incredible. There's like slide canyons, slot canyons. There's the Tonto, which is this inner plateau with beautiful views to the rim and all the way down the inner gorge. There's beaches, like some of the most beautiful remote beaches out there you'll ever find. You can feel like you're in Tahiti or some other place, but you have this private remote beach down the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So it's beautiful. And it's pretty diverse because it's almost like the entire range of the Sierra just dumped upside down. And that's your playground to start exploring with.
Oh, how interesting! What an interesting way to call it. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But but it's that thing of intense downhill. I mean, once again, the word's intense. Intense downhill. I would think that must be tough. If you say the first day is tough, that's the day we're all meant to be acclimatizing and working out how we feel and so on. So that gives you the hardest day of all, does it?
Typically, it's the hardest day of all. On the flip side, on the positive side, usually the packs are a little bit lighter. You don't need as much warm weather gear when you're backpacking the Grand Canyon.
Right.
You don't need as much food because lower altitude and just the way it's kind of designed, your body doesn't require as much calories to kind of backpack the same amount. And also, once you're down, then it's a little bit easier to kind of get up, to explore around. So
yeah, but then you go up again.
You go up, but you go up on the positive side because your pack is much lighter. You're in much better shape, and you're highly motivated to get out at that point, right? So
yeah, I still ain't sold on that one. But funny.
So let me tell. There's one route that I discovered with my kids last year, and I'm not. Tell me if you don't want me to talk about my kids just yet.
Absolutely, yeah. You carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been. This is a side conversation. So we started the Grand Canyon back in 2014, 2015, and then we started kind of on one route. We added a second route, a little bit more remote. I actually first backpacked it with my wife back in 2020, called the Escalante route. And it's absolutely beautiful as well. And then I had this idea that I wanted to go explore like all the parts of the Grand Canyon. And so we started something, we would call it like the Grand Canyon limited edition trips, but basically we're going to do just 2 or 3 trips each year in a different part of the Grand Canyon. So over the course of like 5 or 6 years, we will have backpacked the entire Grand Canyon trail system that's kind of accessible to groups like ours. Wow. So that's one idea. And in this past year, we were going to go out to this area called Thunder River, which is on the North Rim. And the North Rim, it's a completely, most people just make it to the South Rim. About 90% of visitors to the Grand Canyon come out to the South Rim. But the North Rim gets 10% of visitors, and the trails out there are a lot more rugged, a lot more harder, more difficult to get to. Sure. And we were trying to get out to the North Rim to this area called Thunder River, but there was too much snow out there. I had 3 kids and myself, so 14, 12, and 8 years old. And this was their spring break as going to scout a backpacking trip with Dad. And instead of coming to Thunder River, we rerouted and went a bit farther west, a little bit farther down the plateau to this area called Jump Up Canyon. And Steve, it is the easiest entry into the Grand Canyon I think you would ever find. It's like a slow walk down the wash.
You're talking my language now.
A slow walk down the wash. And then you get down to these amazing, eventually you drop down into Jump Up Canyon and then Kanab Creek. And you get these amazing, hundreds of feet, narrow canyons. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it feels like a whole different world. And so that might be something you can consider. The only downside is a little bit of a down and back up, so I'm not sure it qualifies as a through hike yet. But it's pretty nice. So
talk about the other end, the Hell for Sure, which is a great name, by the way. I don't know whether it's any good as a hike, but it's a fantastic name. So what's Hell for Sure? Who named it? Was that your name of it?
So there's a lake out there called Hell for Sure Lake.
Oh, right.
And that's where the name pulls from. But I also kind of like the name Hell for Sure. So I did name this route Hell for Sure.
Right.
I like to go places that not many other people go backpacking. So you probably won't find me in the JMT or any of these other kind of high popular routes.
Right.
I like to try things that are a little different. And Hell for Sure is an area I grew up in, kind of backpacking. So I grew up in Clovis, Fresno area, and that is kind of the Central Valley of California. There's this town called Shaver Lake, which is about an hour outside of Fresno. And from Shaver Lake, it's right in the middle of the Central Sierra. And you can kind of access all these remote locations. And Hell for Sure is this area is located in this area called Red Mountain Basin. And then there's this other beautiful basin right next to it called Bench Valley. And I had this idea after we had done the Trans Sierra trip and the Grand Canyon trip, we had people coming back to us with like, hey, Chris, where else can we go backpacking? And so I just kind of took them to my own backyard. And this is an area that I love backpacking. I love it. I love sharing with others. No one else really goes out there, or not many people go out there. And we created a loop that goes off trail for about 8 or 10 miles and connects these 2 beautiful valleys with, dozens of lakes up in the Central Sierra. And it's a pretty, we definitely pass about a dozen lakes, and it's a great place to fish and swim. The pace is a little bit more toned down than the kind of the Trans Sierra trip that just goes. Yeah. So that's how we started that route out there. And then people just get back.
Do you find that when you have these different routes that you recommend some, say this might be inappropriate for an old guy like me, or this might be appropriate for an old guy like me? Do you start thinking about that sort of thing? Who you think should go on them, like almost like ratings, a PG-13 and an R and that sort of thing?
Recently, I've started to think a little bit more about that. as we've been getting feedback from others. My general mindset is that anyone could do any of these trips as long as you want to do it. So as long as you're interested in, if you want to make this happen, we'll help you get there. Just like the Trans-Sierra trip. I mean, that is a really difficult trip, but if you want to make it happen, we can help you make that happen. There are a couple of trips though. This trip out to Mount Goddard. Mount Goddard is a little bit more of a burly, big mountain right in the middle of the Sierra, and you got to really want it. There's also the Escalante route in the Grand Canyon. It's a pretty rugged route, and you got to really want it as well. What I've noticed is for first-time backpackers, if they're not truly prepared what might mean, it might scare them off from backpacking. And so,
I was just thinking that you don't want to do that, do you? You want to give someone the passion that you have for it, and certainly you could see we all had it when we were on our trip. We just everyone there loved it. Yeah. And by the way, as an aside, that thorns and roses thing, I think about thorns and roses in most days of my life. From what you said now, because this was a good day, it was a bad day, and just so the listeners know, the thorn is something bad happened, and a rose is something good happened. And you probably noticed this, and I certainly noticed it as the trip went on, and when certainly the great video that Ali did as a result of it, called Thorns and Roses, that nearly everybody had all roses at the end. There were a few thorns to start with, but nearly always roses towards the end. And I think about that still to this day. This was a bit of a thorny day, or this was a rosy day, and you kind of get that sort of thing. That was a bit of an aside. Sorry about that. So tell us about the Tehipite. Is it Tehipite Valley?
Tehipite Valley, yeah. Tehipite Valley.
That's new, isn't it?
Is the newest one that we have, and I was introduced to that by a buddy who I've backpacked with a couple times. Actually, he brought his daughter on the Trans-Sierra trip with us when I took my daughter out. Right. And he was a fly fisherman, and this was kind of like a place that he had heard of as like a mythical land. In Tehipite Valley of a place to go fly fishing. And I had never heard of it. And even though I lived, just about 60 miles from it from the Fresno Clovis area where I grew up, everyone always knows of Yosemite Valley, and that gets all the play with, the beautiful, granite, glacially carved valley and, the waterfalls coming in. Well, Tehipite Valley is a little bit like Yosemite Valley, but with no people. It's down at 4,000 feet elevation. There's waterfalls that cascade into it. It has the largest dome in the entire Sierra, something called the Tehipite Dome. And when you get there, each time you get there, you feel like you're discovering something new. You're feeling like, how could no one have known this place even existed? How could I even, as a backpacker, didn't realize this was here until a couple of years ago? And unfortunately, at the risk of telling all your listeners, you guys are all in on the secret now. If you've heard of Tehipite Valley, you can go look it up, go Google it. It's amazing. It's an amazing, beautiful place. A little bit difficult to get to. And that's kind of where we come in, is kind of helping people make that connection and get to this almost mythical type experience.
So of the trails you currently do, and we'll talk about perhaps some future ones in a minute, but of the trails you currently do, is there one when you wake up in the morning you're going to do it, you think, oh man, I'm looking forward to this one? Or do you look forward to it all anyway? Oh no, forget that. Which is, if you could only do one of your trips again, which one would it be?
That's a pretty hard one to call.
Of course.
A personal favorite is Hell for sure. I wouldn't say it's a guide favorite. It's just, I enjoy fishing. And so after we cook and clean and hey, the group's good, I'm going to take my fishing rod and just go out and go cast. And it's kind of a relaxation thing that I enjoy. And so for me, the Hell for Sure trip, we camp by a lake pretty much every single night, except for the last night we camped by the river. And it's just a way to kind of decompress and enjoy it and watch the sunset and just have some, quiet time, even when you're not on the trail. There's something just, I think, cathartic about casting a line and reeling it in and just casting it in. So.
And by the way, I'm harking back to Thorns and Roses again. Do you do Thorns and Roses every night on most of your trips?
We do. Yeah, we do Thorns and Roses.
I think people should really think about that. And when they're moaning about their bloody feet at the end of the day on the Appalachian Trail, they're sitting around the picnic table bemoaning some idiot who's done something elsewhere. That's a thorn and there's a rose. You'll find you'll have more and more roses as time goes on, but that's my personal opinion. Yeah. And for you with a young family, and you already mentioned about 5 dads and 5 kids going, I know your son went with you for this dad and kid trip. How have you incorporated what is now your business into family life? Because, man, you must be busy all the time doing this sort of thing.
It is. I think I'm very fortunate. It's not just, it's my immediate family that's kind of, they understand how this works.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, are very supportive as well. It's definitely been a family effort kind of getting this going,
Sure.
especially, them parents helping with kids or helping drive and things like that.
Sure.
So I'm okay with that. At first it was, it took some getting used to and adjusting to. There was one story we had where I was on the trail back in 2014 and I got a text message the day before we spent Mount Whitney from my wife. And she's like, I was actually sleeping out under the stars 3 a.m. and the little buzz on the inReach came in and said, "Hey, Chris, my water broke. We're headed to the hospital." And so that was definitely a big experience. It's a small business, and like many small business owners, like there's some sacrifices. You work through you take some risk and some challenges. And this is one of the moments where I woke everyone up. I got to the summit of Mount Whitney and I was able to dial in just around noon, just 20 minutes before she delivered. So I was on the phone while, all the fun was taking place back at home. And it was
Were you FaceTiming?
Not FaceTiming, just on the phone. The reception wasn't quite strong enough. But
right.
I was there good enough to give the name once she was born. So,
and all your kids enjoy the idea of going hiking with Dad? I mean, are you giving them this love of the outdoors, or are they resisting it? Because you're a 14-year-old, they never cooperate with anything, do they?
No,
14-year-olds.
Yeah, they're pretty good kids. I think
girls are much better.
No, this is more of a family or just a life experience. But I think me being away for a bit gives them time to kind of grow up and figure things out on their own. So if I'm gone for a couple of weeks throughout the course of the year, then that's good for them to figure things out as well. And so everyone has moments to just kind of like grow up and figure out how life works, and it's okay. It seems to be working okay, and they enjoy helping out. They like the snack bags afterwards, so I'll help them. They'll help make snack bags, and one of the bonuses is they get to keep a snack bag for the week, so they enjoy those.
And as a small businessman, I guess, where you are. So do you feel under pressure to find new routes all the time? Or are you going to consolidate for a while as you ramp up your team? Because there's always a danger of diversifying too much and not being able to give enough allocation of resources. Is that something that you think of often?
I don't think so. I think backpacking is not a very scalable business. It's not like, you add people, you add guides, you add, it doesn't keep growing. So sure. My vision is just to do a few things really well. So I want to just do a few trips, do them really well. When we see something that's worthwhile or worth adding, add that. Right now, I'm super excited about the Grand Canyon, about this goal of trying to get each, do kind of have an experience that can go on like each major section of the Grand Canyon. So that's kind of one thing we're going to keep adding to is in the Grand Canyon. But outside that, it's just going to be a kind of opportunistic when we have kind of the places we want to go. Like I want to go places I want to spend my time, and it's not just like any place just for the sake of having something. It's got to be something that's unique, something I would enjoy doing. And then if I enjoy doing it, or Dave, who now works with me on a full-time basis, if you would enjoy doing it, then that's worth taking it and sharing it with other people.
And you sent me a little section of the email you sent me was things that have gone wrong on the trail, and how you can avoid them. Because before we get into those instances, how do you approach taking a group of 12 to 15 people out into the wilderness? Because you've only got one pair of eyes, and I can tell you, I got lost, and I was frightened for 20 minutes. People have gone ahead of me. The people who were meant to be behind me obviously stopped for 20 minutes and didn't tell me. Why would they? So I'm standing there in the middle of the trail thinking, I have no idea where I am. I roughly know where north is. That was about it. So how do you work that out? Because as I say, you got one pair of eyes. I know you got people helping you on the trip as well. How many? You take 2 people normally with a big group? 3 people? No, we had 3 people, didn't we?
We had 3 people on that trip. That was a little bit unique because Allie was there, kind of from a little bit of a different perspective. Usually 2 people, and so the first day or 2 we'll have someone in the front, someone in the back, kind of keep an eye on things. And so you were never truly lost, but we do treat everyone like an adult, especially on the Trans-Sierra trips that we have. There's a lot more trail, and the trail, we let people kind of spread out and have their time. So there might be 20 or 30 minutes from the front to the back for any given stretch of trail. In the Grand Canyon, we keep people a little bit closer together. It's just kind of the way that process works. But in the Sierra, things can happen. There's lots of things that happen. We've learned a lot over the course of times. When you show up at a junction and if you're not giving explicit directions or you're not telling people, hey, stop here, then you don't know which way they went. So we're always
you were great for that, by the way. I wouldn't want anybody to think that I felt that I've been, it was Chris's fault or anybody else's fault other than my own. You would always tell us you stop at certain places, and I don't think anybody screwed up as far as that was concerned.
Yeah.
They just happened to have stopped for a 15-20 minute break, and the people behind me, and I didn't know what to do, so I just stopped.
Yeah.
I just stood there like an idiot. I had no idea. And actually, I felt a lot better because you said that you actually lost a 72-year-old man in the first hour of the trial.
That was back in the day. That was back in the day.
Did you ever find him?
Yeah, so incredibly. So we had a large group, I think of 15 on that trip, and within the first 45 minutes, there's one junction there. Within the first hour and 10 minutes, there's a junction, and back. So I think 2014, we had one. We kind of did like a daisy chain. The main stop was like 10 minutes after that junction where we're going to meet up. And so, hey, you were supposed to wait for the guy behind you, pass them on, and wait. And that doesn't really work. We've learned that we don't do that anymore. And we got to our final, our first break session, and we were counting heads, and we were one short. And so we're like, hey, does anyone see this guy? And actually someone said, yeah, I saw him. I'm like, well, where'd he go? He's like, he took a right at the junction. I'm like, why didn't you say something? He's like, I thought you knew where he was going. Like, that's okay.
Oh, dear me.
So it took us a while. He was a really fast hiker. He was a local guy from the Fresno area, and he thought he knew where he was going. And so myself and the other guy, we went back to the junction, and then we decided we're going to go walk down and try and find him. We actually walked about a mile. He wasn't there. The trail split again. Long story short, but eventually I left one of my guys back there. We kind of figured out and did some deduction based on, hey, he's a smart guy, sharp guy. I've talked to people who had rode up with him. And sure enough, 4 or 5 hours later, I took the rest of the group forward, and the other guide and this guy who was missing, they caught us, and they kept passing us. In fact, they were just fine. So all's well that ends well.
Maybe I saw a theme because I'm an older guy as well. You also lost your father-in-law for 4 hours as well. So maybe it's just us old guys it happens to.
The father-in-law, that was an interesting one. That was more of a, he was my father-in-law's Korean or Canadian Korean. And there's a little bit of a language barrier. And we were out there backpacking, and the second day on the trail, he was struggling a little bit. He had some altitude sickness, and he was hurting. And I think he felt bad mentally that, like, hey, I'm kind of holding this group back or letting them down. And so the next morning, after looking Big Wet Meadow, he wanted to get an early start. And I'm like, yeah, no problem, June. Just go ahead. And, about 15, 20 minutes, there's a stream crossing, just kind of wait for us there. And so he went ahead, and we caught up with him. We were hiking behind him, and we got to the stream crossing, and there was no June. And then we got to the next stream crossing, and there was no June.
Oh,
and then we spent a few minutes looking up and down the trail, and he had actually just kept going. He was just so passionate. He didn't want to get behind the group. But eventually we found him again, and it worked out okay. But that's another moment.
That's nerve-wracking. Yeah. That stuff's nerve-wracking, I would think. And I know it's your business, but has running the business enhanced or hindered your love of hiking? Because, you have those other considerations. You look like you're having fun all the time. You kept racing Ali, trying to take on the younger guy and doing push-ups and things like that, and going up a mountain faster than the other one. I mean, I don't know what that was all about. But do you find your love of hiking is growing, or is this your business now more than your hobby?
So I would characterize it a little bit differently. I don't think I'm much of a hiker. I mean, I do run.
Of course you're not.
There are some people who are really into hiking. They are hiking on the weekends and doing trails and this and that. Yeah. I enjoy sharing great experiences with other people, and that's what really motivates me. I enjoy motivating and inspiring other people and helping people accomplish things they might not otherwise thought possible. So that's what motivates me, and each of our experiences are like that. So I definitely enjoy it.
That really comes across, mate. It really does. And I could see you were taking vicarious joy in our joy as well. So that was lovely. And so what's next for you as an organisation? Do you got anything in your mind of places you're thinking about now to do?
We do have some places in mind. They're still kind of in the works. I'm not sure if I'm ready to share them at the moment, but
that's okay.
The Grand Canyon's definitely, that's one place we're just going to keep focusing on and building out. I have a couple other places in mind. We'll see how they go, and maybe some other business models as well. I really enjoy sharing. We have a series of online talks and events that we do, and we've been doing this the last couple of years. Through the pandemic, we started it, and we have about 20 different classes we do, from like backpacking 101 to fresh meal ideas.
And they're
and stuff
normally
like that.
too late for us on the East Coast, by the way.
We're working-
for us old,
yeah.
let's- hang on, for us old guys on the East Coast, because I'm in bed by 9:30 most of the nights. In my time, your thing starts at 10 o'clock my time. That's never going to happen for me, so I'll be falling asleep.
Yeah, so working on
But I love those. I did attend one or two of them, and I loved them. They were very informative and they were fun. And I think I'd strongly advise anybody, if they were thinking of getting involved in doing this, just to listen into one or two of Chris's talks, and he has people on and just talking about what they do, and he answers questions. It's well worth it, because I know when I listened in, and I already knew I was going with you at that time, I got very excited thinking about what was going to happen. So if people do decide that a group led hike into the wilderness is going to be for them, how do they book? What do they have to do?
They could check out our website. It's tsxchallenge.com, and you could sign up. We have our 2024 trips are currently listed. And whether you're going to go with an organized group or just looking for more ideas on your own, you're still welcome to join our talks. They're kind of open, they're free to the public, and again, our goal is really just to inspire others. And so hopefully you have a safe and enjoyable trip out there, in this year and years to come with your friends and family, or with an organized group like us. All are welcome.
Yeah. I as people know that and I deliberately didn't, just so people know, when I did this trip, and I then did the podcast after about the trip, I deliberately didn't involve you, Chris. Not because I didn't value your opinion. It's just I wanted everybody who experienced your event to tell what they thought about it. And this was your shot to talk about your stuff. I wasn't interested in what you had to say at that time for that particular podcast, because I wanted those who experienced it. And as you heard it, uniformly, we all loved it. And I've had quite a few very special moments in my life, both before I took up hiking and especially since I took up hiking. But I can honestly say that going with Team 6, by the way, that was our name, wasn't it? Team 6, was one of the absolute highlights. And it's one I'm never going to forget. And you told me I could do it. So thanks for making it happen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for believing in us and taking a chance with us. I appreciate that as well.
And very much thanks for coming back on and sharing the story today. I think you've got a great story. I think you've got a great group of people working with you. I know Dara's moved on now, and I know Ali's come back a few times. So there's this interchanging team of people, but I'm sure you're going to bring good people on to continue the story. So I thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. All right.
Okay, buddy.
Thanks,
Take
Steve.
it easy. Bye. He's such a great guy. And should you ever choose to go on one of Chris's hikes, then I can personally guarantee you that you're going to have a truly extraordinary experience. No, he's not paying me for the advertising. I just think that he provides, as I say, an extraordinary experience. And I know that some of my fellow members of Team 6 will be listening, and they're going to be nodding their heads in agreement with me right now. Great stuff. Now, from the top of Mt Katahdin is a very emotional Jessica Lang-Wright.
Hello.
You made it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. How are you feeling?
No words.
Well, that's not helpful for an interview.
I know.
Oh dear. This emotional roller coaster. I knew you'd feel this way at the top of Katahdin, but how was the hike this morning?
Good. We had some great views on the way up to the tree line.
Yeah.
The undercast this morning, and then we got above tree line, and it was like a conga line of through hikers.
Oh
trying
dear.
to figure their way through the rock scrambles and stuff. It started to get socked in.
Oh, did it? Oh, shame. What's it like up?
The top.
What's it like up there now?
Right now, it's pretty clear. The summit's clear. Clouds are racing by. You can see the tableland from where
really?
I'm standing.
Oh dear. So tell me, Jessica, how different is it to when you've done it before?
Total. First of all, they rerouted the trail.
Really? Really?
It seemed totally different than the last time I was up here. At least through the rock scrambly bits.
Yeah.
And the erosion is like amazing, like how just different it looks in general. Yeah. But
But seeing the summit, seeing the brown sign, I tell you, I've got hairs on the back of my neck standing up about it. I'm talking to you about it as well, and I know how it feels just seeing that brown sign and touching it, and especially after all these miles that you've walked. And how's Mike, by the way?
Yeah, emotional mess too.
Is he? That's fantastic. So what time did you get up this morning then?
Got up at 5. Didn't sign the register until 7:45.
Oh, really? So you weren't in any hurry then. And it's now 1:20. You texted me at 1:23, something like that. 1:23 p.m., something like that. So you made it up there. How are you going to get down?
Still not sure. I've gone down A-ball before.
Right.
Right. I don't know. There's a couple of spots on that hunt trail I really don't want to go down. So
yes, take your time.
We're going to look at it.
Take your time. So I suppose the question now, after having done all this, is: are you going to take stock now? Are you going to go home? What are you going to do now?
We have to go back to New Hampshire to head south. We've got 726 miles to go.
So the enthusiasm has come back then. Did you talk about stopping now? Because I've been wondering whether you would say, "I know I'm done, just done" or something. Have you been discussing it this week?
Not really. I think we made the decision a long time ago that we were going to keep going until it was done.
Right.
I've got a little bit of a time limit now. I got to be done by mid-December, but I've still got some time and I've still got a little bit of money. So.
Oh, there we are. How about that? A little bit of money. That's always helpful. So how many are there up there now then at the summit?
Quite a few. There's at least 7 or 8 of us that I know are through hikers. There's some day hikers up here too. There's a ranger.
Right.
There's quite a few of us.
Now, the important thing, Jessica, is what happened last night. Did you get ready for your Katahdin pose, or did you just wing it when you got there?
I kind of had a thought in mind for a long time. So, yeah, it wasn't anything too unusual. We do have a group of people that we met only a few days ago, some of them, and one we met a long time ago that they came up in costumes. It's amazing. So they had to get prepared. And as I'm talking to you right now, Steve, it is starting to snow.
Oh my gosh. Well, look, listen, I'm not going to hold you up too much to the top, because I know how beautiful it is up there and how fantastic it is to be with people. I can't tell you, I'm so, and it's not for me to be proud of you, but I'm really proud of you because you've battled through this so much. I know you've got a long way to go, but you've done this lot of the tough stuff now. So I hope you do carry on. I'm delighted you say you're going to carry on. And please send me a picture, the summit picture, because I really want that in this week's show notes, okay?
Okay, I will. And thank you.
Oh.
And can I say one thing real quick?
Of course, so much you like, yeah. I just don't want to hold you up.
Yeah, my husband attempted to climb up here today and didn't quite make it in time. But he may actually be coming up now. And it was good of him to do that.
Yeah. I can tell you're so overwhelmed by it. It is an overwhelming moment. I'm just glad you had that experience, in a through hike. I know it's not quite the end, but you know what? It is still an important part of this trip as well. And New Hampshire and Maine is going to smash you up, isn't it? And it seems to have done that to you. But you're still there, and you got to the top, and you're on that sign, and you're going to have that picture forever and ever. So I think it's just awesome. I can't tell you, I'm just so pleased for you, and I just wish you well, in the next couple of days, and I just hope you keep on trucking and really enjoy the rest of your hike.
Thank you. We'll be back on trail hopefully by the weekend.
That's fantastic. All right, Jessica, you take it easy, okay? And say hi to Mike from me and say congratulations as well.
I will.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
And I actually signed off on that interview there because I didn't want to take up that time of Jessica's at the top. I know what it's like up there, and it's one of those magical moments you need to enjoy with the people you've hiked up there with. But she wanted to carry on talking, so we carried on talking. And then she said something about the 100-mile wilderness, which I thought you'd like to hear. Here she is again. So we're back on, and we were chatting afterwards. To be honest with you, I didn't want Jessica to be as emotional as she was for her own sake, because and I know it's an emotional time. But we carried on talking, and she said that there's she had a tough few days in the 100-mile wilderness as well.
Yeah, so the last 2 days in the 100-mile, the tropical storm came through.
Oh my God!
We were pretty wet, and then it really, really rained overnight 2 days ago, probably like 2 inches of rain. So the last day between the next to the last shelter and the last shelter, we had to ford so many times. And I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I'm 5'11", so I'm not a short girl. And I'm a lot of legs, and the water was up to my crotch more than once.
Oh my God.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. And then at one point, like, Mike got almost knocked over, and I'm thinking, dear God, if something happens to him, what am I going to do to help him? Like, I'm the one who's like useless and freaking out. So, yeah.
You're not, though. You made it. You're there. You done it. You're standing on Katahdin. I mean, just think about that. That's not to be denied. You're up there right now, and I think it's one of those things that you can always take pride in. New Hampshire and Maine have kicked your ass,
yeah,
and you're still running. So that's amazing. That's amazing. Look, I just wish you only good thoughts, and take your time and take care going down as well, because this is not an easy place to get down from either.
No, it definitely is not.
Enjoy Millinocket, and we'll speak next week, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Okay, bye, Jessica. Bye.
Bye.
I'm sure there have been times on this trip when Jessica might have preferred not to have a metaphorical microphone shoved in her face, but she's always come through and told us how she's feeling. She's had a visceral experience, and it hasn't always been pretty. She's still going. As you could probably tell, I was kind of expecting her to say that she was done, but she isn't. And she and Mike are going back to Hanover and heading south very soon. Great to hear from her. Thanks as ever this week goes to our donors. This past 7 days has seen contributions from recurring donors Woody Bess, Natisha Webb, and Jeffrey Breeden. We can't do this without you guys, so my heartfelt thanks again, and I hope that one or two of you out there might decide that we have enhanced your hiking experience and that you'd like to chip in. You know what to do, so I hope to see a few new names in the coming weeks. Now, Joanne, who continues her now southbound journey and who has reached Erwin. Here she is.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Joanne. How are you?
Good.
And you are good, I know, because you're in the Roan Highlands, or you've been in the Roan Highlands and the Borders. First off, where are you actually now?
I am at Uncle Johnny's in Erwin.
Oh, blimey. How's that? I never actually went there. What's it like?
It's very quaint. It's right on the trail. They have several cabins. They have a bunkhouse with a nice wood stove in it that was burning last night, and there was a big fire in the pit last night. And they have a grassy area under the trees in the middle where I actually tented for the night because I didn't plan on stopping here. I was just going to run into the post office in Erwin and get a box with some new shoes and things in it and then head back to the trail. But it was Columbus Day.
Oh, right. Of course it was. That's right. Yeah. You kind of forget those things when you're out on the trail, don't you?
Never even thought of it.
Yeah, dear. And of course, Erwin is where Miss Janet lives, or she certainly used to live. I don't know where she still does. Have you met Miss Janet on this trip?
No.
Do you know who she is? Have you heard of her? Yeah.
I've heard of her, but I don't know a lot about her.
She's a great trail angel. I tell you, she really is.
Yeah.
So you've been through the Roan Highlands and the amazing bulls, which is the best feature of the South as far as I'm concerned. Talk us through that.
So it was cold. We just had a cold spell. and wind.
What's cold, by the way? What's cold these days?
Cold is like in the low 30s at night, and then in the low 50s with a biting wind during the day.
Oh, wow. It's tough.
So the day I went over, I was you climb up and up and up on the switchbacks back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you can see the daylight up through, and the trees get a little bit shorter and scrubbier. And then you're coming to them. And so I actually took a picture of it, like approaching the bulge, you can see the openness beyond the trees. And then you get up there, and it's like these huge mounds of grass and the tall wildflowers, goldenrod, and all the different flowers, the closed bottle gentian, lots of them. Just beautiful.
Was it quite difficult with a biting wind, though, to really enjoy it?
Not that day. It was starting to pick up, but it was still sunny, mostly sunny. So it was breezy, but the views were beautiful, and just being up there, and the air is starting to clear now with the cooler weather. And just the views. I wish I had the timing to camp up there, but at the same time not, because that night the clouds came in and it did rain, and it was incredibly windy over the night. And I wanted to go up to Roan High Knob Shelter, which is the highest one on the trail.
Yeah.
But it was getting dark, and it was starting to rain, and I needed water. And so I just got my water and camped down at Carver's Gap, which ended up being a really good decision because I slept warm, and I was out of the wind that I could hear, whistling through the tops of the trees.
Although the Roan High Knob shelter is an enclosed shelter, it's 4 brick walls. Did you go, or stone walls? Did you go and see it at all?
I did. I went up to see it because I wanted to say I was there and see what that elevation is like at 6,200 feet, I think.
That's right, yeah.
So it's beautiful. And going up there, you're going through the spruce and whatnot, and it smells like a Christmas tree farm. But I met several people coming down that had stayed up there, and the shelter was full, and there were people camping like higher up on the knob, so like really exposed to the wind. So I really was happy with my decision. And I still went up and saw the shelter and, said I was here, and I wish I knew. It says it's a globally rare environment.
Oh.
So I kind of wish I knew what the rarities were. So I'll have to look that up at some point. Like, what is so rare up there that we don't know?
People not smoking dope in the shelter. That's a rarity. I know that when I went there, I looked in there and I had to put my head in and went, oh my God, the smell of it was horrendous.
You didn't need to smoke it, huh? It was
No. It's what they call, I think it's what they call a safety meeting. But I know it's what they call a safety meeting. But
Gotcha.
But I'm glad you went to see it. But it's a magical place anyway. I think that whole area is a tremendous place to walk. And you say in your note to me that the 4,000 feet in New Hampshire and in Tennessee are very different. And of course they are, but explain the difference.
They are incredibly different. And I didn't even know that the mountains down here were so high and higher than in New England until I started researching about the trail. So it's a big deal in New Hampshire to climb the 4,000 footers. And you feel like some of them you're taking your life in your hands to climb up those rocks and back down those rocks. And it's just, a lot of them are bare rock peaks.
Yes.
And down here, they're like almost rolling hills. Some of them are steep, but they're wooded or they're balds.
Yeah.
And you don't realize really how high up you are until you check or you see the vegetation start to change to the high altitude spruces. And I'm not very good with the trees, but the different kinds of trees that you see up high.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going northbound from the south and you hit the Smokies, you suddenly realise how high you are there. And then there's more of that height going on as well. It's just that when you get to New Hampshire, it just smacks you in the face, doesn't it? I mean, just totally knocks you out.
It does. But in that shelter, the Roan High Knob shelter, that's almost the same elevation as Mount Washington.
Yes, I know. It is almost, you're right, it's almost exactly the same. It doesn't feel at all the same though, does it?
It doesn't. It's like astonishingly different.
Although I would say I actually got off at Carver's Gap. I was due to meet my then wife there at the time, and it was a shocking day for us. We'd missed each other, and it was a misty day, and it was just a horrendous nightmare. But I went down into Rome what's it called? The town, Rome Mountain, the town at the bottom. And that's a long way. And you know then that you're a long way up because it's a heck of a long way down by road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And did you stop in at is it 19, near 19, where they got Mountain Harbour for the breakfast? Did you go there?
I went to Mountain Harbor. I ate so much breakfast I didn't stop for lunch.
Isn't it awesome, though?
It's incredible. And I want to stop there on my way back up through, too.
Yeah, quite right too. Yeah. Why
yeah.
not?
That was really fun and nice people there too. And it's not just the breakfast either. They've got the food cart and a little bar there for some local beer at night. And
I didn't know that. Wow. That wasn't there when I went through. Certainly wasn't there when I went through.
Oh, the whole place is lovely with waterfalls and it's beautiful. Gorgeous.
So you've said in your note also that the fall colours are coming down south now as well. Has that been quite pronounced? I mean, and is it as pretty as it is in New England and Maine?
I suspect it will be. Right now they're very soft. There are some leaves on the trail in some places, but it almost feels like the early ones were from it being so dry, and now the actual colored ones are starting to fall a little bit. The maples, the soft wood trees. So in some places or some sides of the hill, there'll be some color, and then other sides, it looks like it's really not started yet. So,
right. You still got a few weeks to go. You still got a few weeks to go, though, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it's going to get better, yeah.
I think like after these cold days, it'll probably pop out a little bit more.
Sure. And are you keeping warm enough? Have you got enough warm gear with you?
I have been good so far, but something a little silly I did that worked out for me was one night we had a frost warning. It was the night after Carver's Gap, and I was up a little bit high. The wind was blowing. I needed water. It was getting late, and I said, I'll get water, and then I'm sure I'll find a place to set up tent. And I headed up the mountain, and I went well over a mile and found no dispersed sites. And I came across a roadbed, an old roadbed, and I found a spot that was kind of level, but it was on the windy side of the mountain. I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to be so cold. But I have a tarp tent, so I set it up low so the wind couldn't creep underneath the edges.
And what happened? Did you stay warm enough during the night or not?
I stayed warm, but I did it because I have a 30-degree quilt, and I'm trying not to trade it out for my heavier bag. Ooh. So I have one of those like silver Mylar emergency blankets that they give people after a marathon.
Sure.
And I put it over my quilt, and I'm like, well, we'll see what happens because I know condensation happens inside the tent. And I was warm during the night. In fact, I tucked my head in and woke up at 8:15 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Slacker.
But when I picked up the Mylar, it was this really, really wet film of water that stuck the Mylar and my quilt together. So I was lucky it was still breezy, and I took my quilt out and threw it over my tent, and it dried in the wind. So
nice. I'm glad. It's good that you keep warm. I would worry about a 30-degree bag in the next few weeks. I know you don't want to change it out, but you want to be careful because it can get really, really cold, especially in the Smokies. So I would give that a bit of thought if I were you. Have you got a quilt liner as well? I presume you have for bag liner.
I have a liner, and I have my warm clothes. So.
Yes, there's that. You're probably going to be okay. But, I got down to 7 degrees in April in the Smokies. 7 freaking degrees.
I know. I am a little afraid.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't. Once you've been that cold, you realise that how dangerous it can be. So I would think about 30-degree bag. I'd get you've probably got another one anyway, I suspect, but perhaps get it to you as soon as possible. But, your choice. You manage your own hike and you've managed it well so far. One final thing I wanted to ask you was you mentioned the Roan High Knob shelter was full of people. So are you surrounded by these section hikers, weekend hikers, or what is it? Is the bubble coming towards you now?
That was the weekend, so there were a lot of section hikers. In fact, there was several people hiking up on the Balds to stay the night. Right, but it's pretty sparse for through hikers. There's one gentleman here, and he's like, it's a ghost town out here. There's not a lot of through hikers right now. Most of them have gone by me because the younger through hikers, they're ready to be done.
Drive you crazy, don't they? Yeah.
They're just flying down the trail. But no, there's not a lot of people, day hikers and section hikers, and they're so friendly to talk to. It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be great, and I'm sure they're impressed with with what you're doing as well. And you're going from Erwin now to Hot Springs next, I think.
Yeah.
And I love that little hike. It's a lovely little hike. So I think you'll enjoy that and enjoy yourself in Hot Springs as well. But look, you're getting there. So we'll catch up again next week and keep on trucking. Okay.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers then. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I couldn't do it the way Joanne's doing this hike. She's perfectly happy with her own company. And while I don't mind my own company, for me, the hike is so much improved by that bonding, those quiet conversations with others who assume a disproportionately important part of your life, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 days on the trail. But of course, that's what makes long trails so unique, with everybody having the opportunity to do exactly what they wish. And you can't deny, Joanne's definitely doing her own thing. More power to her. I mentioned earlier that I'd had some thoughts about my 400th episode, and I actually got what I thought was the best idea today from one of our listeners and donors, as it happens. This person asked about the minutiae of hiking the AT and all those day-to-day moments that need to be taken care of. And I think I may expand upon the idea by inviting a few past guests back on the show to share their thoughts on these minutiae. What do you think? Let me know sooner rather than later, as I'll have to get on with organising it. Just email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com and give me your thoughts. Finally, let's hear from George as he's battling through Maine in his last couple of 100 miles. I'll see you next week. Monday the 19th of September 1983, mile 1937.1. I awoke, still tired, at 6:30 this morning. If any mice were scampering around the shelter last night, I slept through it. I had been thoroughly exhausted when I went to bed last night. Leaving the shelter this morning at 8 o'clock, I was not up for that which I had to do today. But, again, a through hiker has powers far beyond those of mortal men. There was a lot of mud along the trail. Rain had fallen briefly and sporadically several times as I was preparing to leave, but had stopped by the time I set out. It was again very warm for mid-September in western Maine, on the muggy side, foggy and quite breezy. A so-so day. A short side trail from the shelter led to Piazza Rock, an immense fallen slab of the cliffs above. Wedge-shaped on the end near the cliff face, the rock had jammed solidly between two huge boulders which had preceded it down onto the plateau. The rest of the rock was a long, broad, shallow platform projecting outward far above the forest floor. Totally unsupported for most of its great length, it appeared extremely fragile, but a few trees growing from small pockets of decomposed needles along its top indicated the formation's age, and it will probably be there long after this tired wanderer is dust. A thin, sullen drizzle began to fall. The first couple of miles of trail consisted of short, steep climbs connecting long, broad plateaus. The Appalachian Trail passed several slab caves formed by fallen rocks from the cliffs above, a bog, and two very nice mountain ponds. On Ethel Pond, a lone duck was swimming slow circles, trailing a long, perfect wake over the dead calm surface of that small body of water. The forest along the far shore was dimly visible through the mist and drizzle. The world seemed very old. The flat ground around the ponds was nevertheless evil walking, a mess of tangled tree roots and piles of jagged boulders thrusting up through the soggy, dark earth at all angles. Everything was slick, damp and treacherous. I never could break into an actual stride. The trail up Saddleback from Eddy Pond was steep, but with few hazardous sections for a change. I made the ascent in good shape. A surprise awaited me at Treeline. A wind was blowing up there stronger than any I'd encountered on the Appalachian Trail, apart from one night on Mount Washington. The trail became very steep at that point. I had to fight my way up against a gale lashing at me from my left. It was gruelling work to make that ascent while struggling to avoid being blown off the mountain. It was cloudy, clammy and generally miserable, just the type of weather for which I had been hoping on the greatest expanse of above treeline walking on the Appalachian Trail in Maine, 3 miles. My T-shirt was sweat-soaked from the climb, and the force of that wind against the damp was bone-chilling, despite the relative warmth of the actual temperature. I was compelled to put on my chamois shirt and even a ski cap to protect my left ear, which was continually blasted by the full brunt of that biting wind. It was a day of strange contrasts. The grades moderated along the crest, and most of the final mile to the summit was a series of gradually ascending terraces. Dark, soggy tundra was interspersed with ledges of naked rock dabbed with lichen. Masses of ground-hugging plants spread out like thick carpets, while scrub spruce shivered in the gale above them. I was submerged in wind-blasted cloud which roared past me like a raging ghost river. Although the views were wiped out, it was still rather spectacular. When I reached the summit of Saddleback, I was just past the 9/10th point of the entire Appalachian Trail. I know that nobody but me gives a flying about all these fractions which I keep trotting out, but figuring out this stuff helps to fill some long, lonely nights, so live with it. I was completely in the clouds up there. It was a cold grey realm of rock, of wind, fog, granite and alpine plants looking out into a formless universe of streaming white mists. The world was a clean slate where anything could happen. On the Appalachian Trail, anything usually does. I began a steep descent into a saddle between the main summit and a peak known as the Horn. The floor of the saddle, a series of rock terraces similar to the southwest ridge of Saddleback, was much more sheltered from the wind, although it remained open alpine ridge crest, spongy tundra and lichen-covered ledges, tiny pocket bogs in the low spots, groves of Christmas tree-sized spruce, miniature knee-high forests of mangled, stunted spruce, all surrounded by an immense grey void. I caught a brief glimpse of sun while down there. The clouds began to slowly break apart, although the 2 peaks on either side were still cloaked. The slopes on each side of the Horn were steep, but not backbreaking. The summit remained shrouded in white, and the primal wind was howling just as strongly as on Saddleback. I felt I'd reached the end of the world. I finally passed below treeline for the first time in 3 miles as I descended into the sag between the Horn and Saddleback Junior. Sounds more like a candy bar than a mountain peak, doesn't it? The sun again broke through the clouds during my descent from the Horn. It stuck around for the remainder of the day. The long sag between the Horn and Junior huddled beneath the dawn forest of spruce and fir, thickly underlaid with moss everywhere, huge swathes of clover and occasional patches of gently swaying ferns. I passed a small group of hikers in the sag, the first people I had seen since leaving Rangeley, and began the climb up Saddleback Junior. Delicious milk chocolate, chewy nougat, crunchy granite rock. The ascent over inclined ledges was steep and hazardous, as was the descent on the other side, but I enjoyed my first views of the day from the open rocky summit. Even the clouds over Saddleback and the Horn had lifted, although the sky remained hazy and visibility was limited. To the north I could see all the rugged peaks ahead on the Appalachian Trail tomorrow, Spalding, Sugarloaf and the infamous Crockers. The Appalachian Trail in Maine has been, for me, an exercise in survival. A hiker must continually be on the alert as he encounters the many slick, tilted rock slabs and tree roots, especially on the precipitous descents. Since I can never walk through awesome scenery such as this without trying to take it all in, I've been on my back more times than the happy hooker since reaching Maine. I do try to concentrate on hiking, but my mind begins to set up a photograph or work on a piece of description for my journal, and things suddenly become interesting. Those falls generally do not amount to much. My biggest problem is the amount of time I spend taking pictures, finding the perfect f-stop, perfect angle, etc., and just checking out nice views or scenes of beauty. In order to spend all this time not hiking during the day and still make enough miles to stay on track in my quest for Katahdin, I really have to fly along at often reckless speeds when I'm hiking. When I begin to tire, it happens. I took 3 more spills today, none serious. Worse than falling were all the occasions when my foot skidded on slippery rock slabs, smashing my ankle against the edge of a boulder before I could catch myself. Now that I'm forced to hike in running shoes, nothing comes between my ankle and those rocks save for a flimsy sock. I rediscover the pain of bone meets rock 5 or 6 times on an average day. After about a quarter mile of tricky descent from Saddleback Junior, the trail remained fairly level for the ensuing mile to Poplar Ridge Lean-To. I was hiking well this morning, so I was able to take a half-hour lunch break at that spot. The shelter register said that the remaining 7 miles to Spalding Mountain Lean-To were comparatively easy, so I felt able to afford the time. The next quarter mile past the shelter was a gradual climb to some open ledges of the crest of Poplar Ridge and a nice view. Then it was 2 miles of sharp descents mixed with level stretches, nothing terribly difficult. I made it all the way down with only one fall and managed to spin around as I fell and catch myself on my hands before hitting the ground, but it tore a chunk out of my left palm. I know, good thing it wasn't the right one. That made things tough when I was compelled to crab walk down over steep, smooth, tilted rocks, limping along on 1 hand and 2 feet. The descent ended at the ford of Overton Stream. The stream was wide, flat and shallow at the crossing, nothing to it. After a short, sharp climb out of its deep, narrow canyon, alongside a small brook making a long cascade down a sheer rock face, the climb up to the Sugarloaf Range was long and gradual for a main trail. There was more than a mile of level walking along the crest. The footway along that last portion of trail was wet and muddy, especially on those stretches which had become runoff streams from last night's rain. Nevertheless, it was easy hiking through beautiful spruce forest to the shelter. I arrived at Spalding Mountain Lean-To at 6 o'clock, much earlier than I had expected when reading about all the big ascents and descents I would be covering today. There was a great deal of climbing, but the trail was much better than I hoped to find in Maine. As for tomorrow, entries in the register by southbound hikers inform me that the descent from Sugarloaf is a bear, and the entire traverse of the Crockers is terrible. It doesn't sound easy, but I think I can make it to the post office in Stratton tomorrow evening, provided I start hiking early in the morning and do not have to wait too long for a ride. I'm 13 miles from Main 27, the road on which I will be hitchhiking. When I reach that highway, I will have passed over a major hurdle on the Appalachian Trail. The trail mellows a bit after Stratton, with only 3 major mountain ranges to be traversed in the remaining 185 miles to Katahdin. That is where I should be able to make up for some of the time I have lost in western Maine. I'm running out of mountains now. Early tomorrow, I'll pass the point at which less than 200 miles of trail remain. It's been a long walk. Tuesday, the 20th September 1983, mile 1950. Stratton. Mornings on the trail. Generally, I like to spend some time waking up, lingering over breakfast, taking my time loading my backpack, and allowing myself to become reasonably awake before heading out. As I've said, my rhythms are not the rhythms of a morning person. I need some time after awakening before beginning to grind out mileage. The average lapse between my eyes opening and hitting the trail is about 90 minutes. This morning, I awoke at 6:15 and was on the trail at 7:15. That may not sound like much, but I was impressed. I really wanted to hike those 13 tough miles and make it to the post office in Stratton before it closed this evening. I made a special effort to reach Main 27 early, in case I needed to wait long for a ride. The initial mile from the shelter was a steep climb covering the remainder of the ridgeline to Spalding Mountain's summit. I made some good time over it, despite a tangled footway of rocks and roots. I sat down for a moment at the junction with the short side trail up to the summit for a snack before going up. Feeling a gentle rustling in my lap, which I have not experienced much recently in my lonely through-hiker existence, I looked down to find a fat brown mouse snuggling up to me. Gosh, this is a friendly state. I named her Judy. The trail between Spalding and the Sugarloaf Side Trail junction was extremely easy for Maine. I followed a ridge crest beneath gnarled spruce and fir for 2 miles, passing over a few low knobs on a generally decent footway. The forest floor was a spongy dark brown carpet of decaying needles, very wet and hummocky. The last official day of summer in western Maine was the warmest day I'd encountered in the state. A slowly burning off haze was in the air, and the thermometer must have climbed well up into the 70s. I know I sweated out a few gallons as the afternoon progressed. I had intended to take the half-mile, 700-foot rock climb side trail to the summit of Sugarloaf. At a lookout just before the trail junction, I peered out over a world of vague forms, barely visible through the steam. The second highest summit in Maine was supposed to have fantastic views, but I did not feel it would be worth the climb today. particularly when time was of the essence. My guidebook informed me that the summit's attractiveness was somewhat marred by the extensive ski development on the north side and a dense array of communications facilities up on top. I would not even be able to experience the feeling of standing on a remote New England summit. With all these factors arguing against taking the side trail, it still required 10 minutes of reasoning with myself to overcome my mulish insistence upon seeing everything and continue past the side trail on the AT. I had made the right choice. Passing through the southern Appalachians without encountering a bear had been a major disappointment. Thus far in Maine, I had yet to see a moose. I was beginning to lose all hope. Not far beyond the side trail junction, I was in the right place at the right time, high up on the west flank of Sugarloaf. Coming around a bend, I found myself virtually face to face with a large bull moose standing astride the Appalachian Trail, drinking from a small stream which ran across it. We stared at each other, both stunned, for a few moments before he crashed off through the woods. The descent from Sugarloaf was not as bad as those southbound hikers had made it sound in the registers. Except for a quarter mile, which was wickedly steep, it was all rather mild. 2 miles later, I crossed the south branch of the Carabasset River at another wide, shallow ford amidst a lush forest filled with dense undergrowth, and began the ascent of the Crockers. I took my first break of the day a mile later, after a moderate climb to the Appalachian Trail junction with Crocker Cirque Campsite side trail. A small stream crossed the Appalachian Trail at that junction, and it struck me as a good spot to sit down for 15 minutes to rest and drink some water after hiking 6 miles. The ensuing climb was extremely steep, though not as slippery as the average main trail. As a matter of fact, I made it through the entire day without landing on my back or cracking my ankle against a rock once. I could learn to live with that. A stretch of about a half mile on that climb was so steep I had to stop every few minutes to catch my breath. A rare occurrence for me after all these miles, but the Appalachian Trail soon moderated to a reasonable climb. I didn't run into any further difficult stretches for the remainder of the day. I will never again pay attention to the southbounders. They're all wimps. And besides, they're hiking the wrong way. What do they know? Ha! The trail today was rugged, but not nearly as rugged as the Mahoosicks, Baldpate or Moody Mountain. The 4,000-foot summits of both South and North Crocker were generally covered by scrappy-looking northern forests, but each provided partial views, and there were great viewpoints along the ascents and descents. It was a nice conclusion to a pleasant day. The final 5 miles of the Appalachian Trail were a long descent along a ridge from North Crocker to Main 27. There were steep portions near the beginning and the end of that descent, but again, most of it was moderate. I made it to the road at 3 o'clock. I'd hiked the entire rugged 13 miles with only 2 short breaks, and I had 2 hours before the post office closed to procure a ride to Stratton. My job was done. I'd hiked my butt off, and now it was time for the local motorists to come through for me. During my first 10 minutes on that road, I was passed by about a dozen logging trucks, but only 2 passenger vehicles. Fortunately for me, the second one stopped. As far as I can recall, 10 minutes is my shortest hitch. I was dropped off at the post office, I picked up my package, took the short walk to the nearest motel, and was in my room about a half hour after I'd walked off the trail. That was great. Stratton is my last hitch on the Appalachian Trail. My only remaining supply town is Monson, through which the AT physically passes. After getting a ride back to the trail tomorrow, I will need only rely on myself for the remainder of this adventure. A nice-looking restaurant with a salad bar is in this motel. I know where I'm eating tonight. Then I'm going to call the folks at home for the second to last time on the Appalachian Trail. I want to make sure they got my boots and a money order off to me in my final supply package for Monson. I passed the 10-11th point of the Appalachian Trail around the middle of my hike today. I care, that's who. I also moved under 200 miles left to go early this morning. In the 70 miles between here and Monson, all I will have to contend with are the Bigelow Range right at the beginning, 3 scattered small mountains, and the fording of the mighty Kennebec River at around the halfway point. Come to think of it, that sounds like a rather busy 70 miles. Stratton is my second to last trail town on the Appalachian Trail. Unlike Rangeley and Gorham, which were prosperous tourist destinations and looked the part, Stratton is a throwback to those towns through which I passed during those long ago days down south. Surrounded by noted resorts, whose prosperity generally missed this place, Stratton is a quiet, peacefully ageing village of old, weathered, smallish houses, sort of a Tom Sawyer town. Just like those similar towns down south, it has a certain charm. It looks like a nice place in which to grow up. Since leaving Gorham, my pace has slowed considerably. I needed 9 days to cover the 108 miles between Gorham and Stratton. Nevertheless, I can't seem to get too worked up about it. I made it to Maine, I will make it to Katahdin. Like so many losers, I was always a dreamer of big dreams. It was part of my downfall. I lost myself in a world of my own imagination and paid little attention to the reality of what I had become. Rather than turning my back on dreams, a form of spiritual death, I put them to work for me on this quest. Like everybody else, I still sometimes get down on myself, but I no longer feel like a loser and have not felt like one for some time. I'm nearing the fulfillment of 3 improbable dreams. One is the moment when I first catch sight of the mountain, which has become the holy grail of this quest. The second is when I stand in that campground in Baxter State Park on the eve of my final climb. The third dream pictures a tired wanderer standing atop Baxter Peak. I chased those dreams northward through the endless blistering hell of a long scorching summer. My dreams were often the one thing that kept me going. Now I'm in Maine, the autumn lands where northbound dreams come true.